Right before he died, a very old man called his 12 sons to his bedside, and in the space of a single afternoon, he told each of them, by name, exactly how their story would end. Not a prayer, not a goodbye, a verdict. For more than 400 years, the English Bible on your shelf has called this passage a blessing. But the men who first wrote it down in ancient Hebrew never used that word here, because half of what the old man said was not a blessing at all. It was a sentence, a destiny, a map of where each of these 12 bloodlines would end up, what they would become, and who would survive. His name was Jacob, also called Israel, and the 12 sons around that bed would become the 12 tribes, the 12 family lines that history has been chasing, arguing about, and losing ever since. Picture the room for a second, an old man, breathing hard, running out of time, 12 grown sons, some of them tall warriors, leaning in close, and every one of them waiting to hear what their father will hand down, a fortune, a promise, a blessing. What they got instead was the truth. Here is what almost no one tells you. When you read Genesis chapter 49 in English, the words have been smoothed, polished, made gentle, but the Hebrew underneath is sharp. It hides puns, warnings, and double meanings that simply cannot survive the jump into English. So tonight, we are going to do something different. We are going to open these words one name at a time, like breaking 12 seals on a sealed scroll. And behind each seal is a single Hebrew word that your translation quietly changed. By the time we reach the 12th name, one of these words is going to change how you read your own last name, your own family, maybe your own face in the mirror. Because Jacob did not begin by saying, "Let me bless you." Look at the very first line, Genesis 49, verse 1. He says, "Gather together, and I will tell you what will happen to you." And then he uses 3 Hebrew words, Be-acharit hayamim, in the end of days, in the days after. Think about that. This is a father on his deathbed, and the first thing he claims is that he is not just talking about tomorrow. He says these words reach into the far future, the last days. So this is not only ancient history. According to the text itself, it is a prophecy still pointing forward. Now, one quick question before we open the first seal, because I already know this is going to split the comments. Do you think the translators softened this Hebrew by accident or on purpose? Hold that thought. Tell me at the end. Let's open the scroll. The first name is Reuben, the firstborn. By every law of that world, Reuben should have inherited everything, the leadership, the double portion, the crown of the whole family. And Jacob starts exactly the way you'd expect. He calls Reuben his might, the first of his strength, excelling in honor, excelling in power. You can almost feel the blessing coming. And then it snaps. Jacob says one word and the entire future collapses. In English, it reads unstable as water, but the Hebrew word is pachaz. And pachaz does not simply mean unstable. It means reckless, boiling over, uncontrolled, like water that bursts a wall and can never be gathered back. It is the picture of someone who had every advantage and threw it away in a single reckless moment. Then Jacob says the line that ends Reuben's claim, "You shall not excel. You will not have a top place." The firstborn is demoted, out loud in front of all his brothers. So here is the fate hidden inside that one word. Reuben, the tribe, was given land first, out on the far side of the Jordan, on the exposed edge of everything. And when the great empires came, the tribes on that exposed edge were among the very first to be swept away and lost to history. First to be born, first to be forgotten. So if your family story traces back to Reuben, then Jacob's word about you is a hard one. You were built for greatness and warned in the very same breath not to throw it away. Type Reuben in the comments if that one hit a little too close. CO1 is open, 11 to go. The next two names come out of Jacob as a single breath, Simeon and Levi. He does not separate them, and that by itself is the clue. Your English Bible says something like, instruments of cruelty are in their habitations. It sounds vague, almost poetic, but the Hebrew is not vague at all. The phrase means weapons of violence, and the word for violence here is one of the harshest in the entire Hebrew Bible. Raw, unjust, blood-on-the-ground violence. That is what Jacob calls the tools of these two sons. Then comes a word that scholars still argue over, mecharotehem. Some translate it their dwellings. Some say their swords. Some say their plans. It is so old and so rare that even now no one is fully certain, which tells you just how ancient this text really is. But the ending is crystal clear, and it is brutal. Jacob does not bless Simeon and Levi. He curses their anger, and then he seals their fate with two words, I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel. Divide, scatter. Now watch what actually happened in history. The tribe of Levi never received its own block of land. Instead, the Levites were spread out in cities scattered among all of the other tribes, divided exactly as the word said. And Simeon's territory was swallowed, absorbed inside the borders of the much larger tribe of Judah, until Simeon as a place basically disappears from the map. Two brothers, one verdict, scattered by name centuries before it happened. So, if your line runs back to Simeon or Levi, then Jacob's word about you is this: your strength was real, but it was your temper that decided your address. Which of these two verdicts feels heavier to you? Tell me below. 2 seals down. Now the tone changes completely, because the fourth name is Judah. Jacob lifts his eyes and for the first time hands over real power. He calls Judah a lion's cub. He says his brothers will bow to him. He says the scepter, the ruler's staff, will not depart from Judah. This is the royal line. This is where the kings come from. But hidden right here is one of the most argued over words in the entire Bible. Jacob says the rule will stay with Judah until Shiloh comes. Shiloh. And nobody fully agrees on what that word means. Some read it as the name of a place. Some read it, by shifting the ancient vowels only slightly, as the one to whom it belongs. Some read it as a coded title for a future ruler who has not yet arrived. One word, 3 completely different futures, and whichever one is correct changes the meaning of the whole prophecy. Here is the fate sealed into Judah. While other tribes faded, were absorbed, or vanished, the line of Judah survived exile, survived conquest, and gave its very name to a people the world still knows today. Out of 12, this is the survivor. Think about the odds. 11 other names on this list faded, absorbed, or scattered, and this one, the lion, keeps its scepter and keeps its name long after the kingdoms around it collapse into dust. So, if your bloodline traces to Judah, then Jacob's word about you is heavy in a different way. You come from the line that was told to hold the scepter and wait for a Shiloh that scholars are still arguing about right now, tonight, in your comments. And I want to hear it. What do you think Shiloh means? Drop your answer below. CO4 is open. Fifth name, Zebulun. This one is short, almost too short, but it hides a real historical puzzle. Jacob says Zebulun will live at the shore of the seas, that his side will reach toward Sidon, a famous seafaring city. Sailors, harbors, ships. Simple enough, except for one problem. When the land was finally divided, generations later, the territory that Zebulun actually received, according to the later record, did not clearly touch the seacoast at all. It sat inland. So people have argued about this for a very long time. Did the borders shift over the years? Was Zebulun trading by sea from a distance? Or did the old poem preserve a memory of the sea that the later map simply lost? Nobody has ever closed that case. And that is exactly the point I want you to feel. This is not a clean, invented story. It has loose threads, tensions, puzzles that serious historians still chew on today, which is precisely what you would expect from a text this ancient. So if your family remembers Zebulun, then Jacob's word about you is a restless one. You were pointed toward the water, toward trade, toward the far horizon, whether or not the map ever caught up. Do you feel more like Zebulun, pulled toward the sea, or more like the tribe we are about to meet, who chose to stay home? Keep that question. 5 seals open. Sixth name, Issachar. And here, Jacob says something that sounds almost like an insult. Your English Bible calls Issachar a strong donkey. Now, is that praise or an insult? In Hebrew, it is honestly both. The words describe a big-boned, powerful donkey, strong, yes, but a beast of burden, a worker. Then Jacob says Issachar saw that rest was good, and the land was pleasant, so he bowed his shoulder to bear. He lowered his back and picked up the load. And here comes the sting. The final phrase says he became a servant to forced labor. In Hebrew, mas oved, tribute, heavy labor for someone else. So the fate sealed here is uncomfortable. Issachar settles on good land, loves the comfort of it, and to keep that comfort ends up bearing burdens for other people. Strength turned into service. It is the story of a tribe that traded a little freedom for a little peace. Let me ask you the uncomfortable question that Issachar forces on all of us. Would you rather be strong and free, but always fighting? Or comfortable and settled, but carrying someone else's load? Because Jacob just named an entire tribe after that exact choice. If your line runs to Issachar, then Jacob's word about you is a mirror. You value peace and good ground, and you have to watch carefully that it never quietly turns into a yoke. 6 seals open. We're halfway. And the next name is where this gets dangerous. Seventh name, Dan. And Jacob opens with a pun that English simply cannot carry. He says, Dan shall judge his people. In Hebrew, Dan Yadin. The name Dan and the word for judge sound almost identical, so Jacob is playing with the boy's own name. The judge will judge. But then the image turns cold. He says Dan will be a serpent by the road, a viper on the path, one that bites the heels of a horse so the rider falls backward. Now, sit with that. A snake in the road does not fight the horse head-on. It waits. It strikes low. It drops a much larger enemy by cunning, not by size. That is a description of a small force that wins by ambush, by intelligence, by patience. And the Hebrew word for that viper, shiphiphon, is so rare it barely appears anywhere else in the entire Bible, an unusual word for an unusual kind of striker. Here is the strange part. Right after this line, Jacob suddenly interrupts himself with a short cry, I wait for your salvation. Out of nowhere, in the middle of talking about Dan, the old man breaks off and reaches for hope. And no one is completely sure why it lands right there, a mystery that has puzzled readers for centuries. I want to be careful and fair here, because this tribe attracts a lot of wild theories online, so let's stay strictly with the text. The text says, "Judge and serpent and a sudden cry for rescue." That is it. If your bloodline runs to Dan, then Jacob's word about you is double-edged. You were built to judge, to outthink, to strike from the shadows when the odds are stacked against you. So, be honest in the comments. Does "the one who wins by cunning, not by strength" describe you, or not? Seal 7 is open. Eighth name, Gad. And this is the one that translators basically gave up on. In English, it reads something like, "A troop shall overcome him, but he shall overcome at the last." Fine, readable. But the Hebrew here is a firework. Listen to the actual sounds. Gad, Gedud, Yegudenu, Vehu Yagud Akev. Almost every word is built from the same root over and over, a root that means a raiding band, a troop, an attack. It is a machine gun of a sentence. Gad, raiders will raid him, but he will raid them at the heel. You cannot carry that in English. The pun, the drumbeat, the way the name Gad hides inside the very word for raid, it all falls apart the second you translate it. So what got lost is not just meaning, it is the sound of war itself, pounding inside the syllables. And the fate? Gad, the tribe, settled out on the frontier, on the exposed eastern side, beyond the river, directly in the path of raiders and armies, a border people, attacked again and again, and fighting back every single time. The verse does not promise that Gad will avoid the fight. It promises that Gad will strike back, at the heel, at the last. So if your family line runs to Gad, then Jacob's word about you is this: you were placed on the front line, you will get hit, but you were also built to hit back. Tag someone in the comments who's pure Gad, always in the fight, never staying down. 8 seals open. Ninth name, Asher. And after all of that violence, this one lands soft, rich, almost delicious. The name Asher itself means happy, blessed. Jacob says, "Asher's bread will be rich. He will provide royal delicacies, food fit for a king." That is the whole verse, short and literally sweet. But do not skip past it, because there is real history buried in it. The land that Asher would settle, up in the western hills, became known for one of the great treasures of the ancient world, olive oil. Rich soil, fat harvests. So the royal delicacies line is not just poetry, it matches the actual reputation of that region for abundance. This is the tribe of plenty, the one whose blessing was simply enough, more than enough. But let me push on it, because comfort always has a shadow. Asher is prosperous, yet notice how little Jacob says about Asher's strength, or leadership, or fight. Prosperity and quiet. That is the whole inheritance. So here's the debate I will throw straight to you. Is Asher's fate the best one on this entire list, a life of plenty and peace? Or is a life with no great struggle also a life with no great story? If your line runs to Asher, then Jacob's word about you is gentle. You were made to feed people, to bring the richness, to be the table everyone gathers around. Vote in the comments. Is wealthy and peaceful the best tribe to be, or the most forgettable? 9 seals open. Tenth name, Naphtali. And this one hides a secret so strange that 2 ancient readers could look at the exact same line and see 2 completely different pictures. Your English Bible probably says, Naphtali is a doe let loose that gives beautiful words. A free deer, graceful, running wild, speaking beauty, lovely. But here is the twist. In the ancient Hebrew, before all the little vowel marks were added underneath the letters, the very same word can be read a second way. Read one way, it is a deer set free. Read another way, it is a spreading tree, a great terebinth that puts forth beautiful branches. A deer or a tree, the exact same letters. Think about how wild that is. Depending on how you breathe the vowels, Naphtali is either a swift, running animal or a deep-rooted, spreading tree, freedom or foundation, speed or strength. And that is a perfect example of what this entire video is about. The English forces you to pick one. The Hebrew lets both live inside the same breath. So if your bloodline runs to Naphtali, then Jacob's word about you is a riddle. Are you the deer, fast, free, impossible to pin down? Or are you the tree, planted, spreading, holding your ground? Genuinely, which one are you, deer or tree? I want to see that fight play out in the comments. 10 seals open, 2 names left. 11th name, Joseph. And now Jacob's voice swells, because this is the son he loved most, the one who was betrayed, sold, and rose anyway. The English says Joseph is a fruitful bough by a well whose branches run over the wall, a vine so full that it climbs over the fence and spills into the neighbor's yard. The Hebrew phrase behind it, ben porat, can mean a fruitful son, a son of fruitfulness. Some readers even connect the sound to a wild, untamed colt. Fruitful or wild, or both at once. Then Jacob remembers Joseph's pain. He says the archers attacked him, shot at him, hated him. That is Joseph's own life story, painted in 3 brushstrokes: the jealous brothers, the pit, the years of betrayal. But watch the turn. Jacob says his bow stayed strong, his arms were made firm by the hands of the Mighty One, attacked and yet unbroken. And then Joseph receives the biggest blessing of all, blessings of the heavens above, blessings of the deep that lies beneath, more than the mountains, more than Jacob's own fathers received. Here is the fate sealed inside that abundance. Joseph does not stay a single tribe. His blessing is so large that it splits in 2. His 2 sons each become a tribe of their own, a double portion. The boy who was thrown into a pit ends up counted twice. So if your line runs to Joseph, then Jacob's word about you is defiant. You may be the one they aimed at, the one they betrayed, and still you are the one whose branches climb the wall and whose blessing outgrows the very people who tried to bury you. If you have ever been the Joseph of your family, underestimated and then unstoppable, put a 1 in the comments. 11 seals open, 1 name left. 12th name, the last seal. Benjamin, the youngest, the baby of the family, the one Jacob almost could not let out of his sight. So you might expect the gentlest words of all. Instead, Jacob says this: Benjamin is a wolf that tears, a ravenous wolf, he says. In the morning he devours the prey, and in the evening he divides the spoil. The baby of the family, described as a predator that hunts at dawn and splits the loot at dusk. And history backs the image. The little tribe of Benjamin became known for producing some of the fiercest fighters in the whole nation, warriors, deadly marksmen, a tribe that once stood almost alone against all the others and nearly was not wiped out, small and ferocious. So the very last word of Jacob's deathbed prophecy is not soft, it is teeth. And if your bloodline runs to Benjamin, then Jacob's word about you is a warning to anyone who underestimates you. You may be the smallest, the youngest, the one they did not take seriously, and you are the wolf. 12 seals, 12 names, all open. Now step back and look at what just happened. An old, dying man gathered 12 sons, and in a few short minutes he named a reckless firstborn who lost his crown, 2 brothers scattered by their own anger, a lion that would carry a kingdom, a sailor pointed at a sea his map barely touched, a strong worker who bent under someone else's load, a cunning serpent that wins by ambush, a frontier fighter who gets hit and hits back, a table of plenty, a riddle that is both a deer and a tree, a betrayed son whose blessing outgrew everyone, and a wolf wearing the face of a baby. And remember his very first words, Be'acharit hayamim, in the last days. Jacob claimed these were not just descriptions of his sons, but a map that reached forward. Now here is what I really want you to sit with. None of what we did tonight required a single strange theory. No visitors from the sky, no secret societies, nothing supernatural bolted on the side. We did exactly one thing. We put the smoothed English right next to the sharp Hebrew, and we let you see the gap between them. And in that gap were puns the translators could not carry, words so old that scholars still argue over them, and single letters that read 2 ways gave 2 different futures. So I will leave you exactly where I promised, back at the very beginning. I asked you at the start, did the translators soften these words by accident or on purpose? Now that you have seen all 12, now that you have watched weapons of violence become habitations, and a pounding war pun become a plain little troop, and a wolf sit quietly under the gentle name Benjamin, I want your verdict. Accident or on purpose? That comment section is about to be a war, and I am here for it. But there is one question that matters even more than that one, and it is the question this entire prophecy was pointing at from the very first seal. Out of these 12, out of the reckless one, the scattered ones, the lion, the sailor, the worker, the serpent, the fighter, the feast, the riddle, the betrayed son, and the wolf, which one is you? Because Jacob did not speak to a crowd, he went name by name, person by person, and somewhere inside those 12 verdicts is the one that sounds like your family, your temper, your gift, your story. So tell me, in one word in the comments, what is your tribe? Type the name, Reuben, Judah, Dan, Benjamin, whatever the old man's words just stirred in you. Because the strangest thing about a deathbed that is thousands of years old is how many of us are still standing around it, waiting, quietly, to hear our own name.